Trevor, you caught it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Because I'm not telling this story twice. Are we rolling?
I'm rolling.
Yes.
100%.
So,
I'm the oldest of two. I have a younger sister. A lot of what was brought to bear in my life early on was challenging for a little kid. We had plenty, we were fine, but we didn't have a lot of money, and we lived in a town full of people with a lot of money. So, that always made me feel like a bit of an outsider. That was really where my greatest pain was. The household I grew up in wasn't easy. My dad's not easy. I think all of those things made me very attuned to minding my own heart as best I could. No one else was going to do it. I was an athlete. I was a swimmer and a lacrosse player and a field hockey player and all sorts of things like that. And I sang in a great choir, and I had a lot of great success. I was an executive at a really young age at NBC at 23. I was making decisions about projects that would have dozens of episodes or cost millions of dollars. I think my heart functions in the way that it does because of how badly I've been hurt. I think being hurt or being excluded or being different or being bullied has made me very attuned to what other people may feel and go through. Having to move in the world that way with this hypervigilance around what's painful or what feels good or what other people are going through had an outsized impact, I'm sure. So I grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia on the New Jersey side, and winter was cold. There was a lot of snow, often. We didn't have enough money always for home heating oil, so we heated our house with wood, with a wood stove. And what that meant was, when you're heating with wood, it means you're constantly on the lookout for, a downed tree or what somebody's put out for the trash or whatever else it may be. So even as a little kid, I can remember coming home from church dressed up, passing a house where a tree had gone down, and my dad leaping out of the car with his two little girls to cut this tree apart and get it in the station wagon. Sometimes it was embarrassing, because it would be the property of somebody who knew you or whose kid knew you or whatever it may be. Felt like being a scavenger a little bit. My dad constantly had a plan for how the wood should be stacked and where it should go, and this wood is drying out and this wood is seasoned and this wood is ready and this is... So I just have a memory of my youth moving wood all the time. In our house, there was one right way to do everything, and it was is the way he imagined. I was always in trouble. But the result is, I think he looked at me and thought, I'm going to make sure she doesn't make any of the mistakes that I made. And so at the end of the day, it was a pretty stifling situation for me. And a very, it was a painful way to grow up. And it's painful again now as a 54-year-old woman. My mother is ill. And my father still, I think he still thinks I'm 12, I internalized the message that I was wrong and that I was bad. And there was a lot of self-loathing. There probably is still a lot of self-loathing. It didn't feel good in my body, in my heart, in my mind, anywhere. I was also, though, very, very, very physically active because I was playing lacrosse or I was, swimming or whatever. So I imagine a decent amount of my pain and anxiety were sort of exercised in that way. I have a painful relationship with my body. I'm not comfortable in my own body. I was in a very harmful place. I was in a very dangerous place. So I was asked to leave school, lost my scholarship, had to go home to my parents, which, as you can imagine, was humiliating and awful. I ended up institutionalized for 28 days. The attention was nice, and he was handsome, and it was summer, and we were having fun. And but he was very, at some point it switched over from being lovely attention and fun to being too much and a little scary. He showed up at this party like it was creepy. He had followed me there. And we had a significant argument in the back yard. I can see it clear as a bell in my eyes. But like he was standing between me and the door. I couldn't really kind of quite get around him. And then one of my friends came out and was like, yeah, let's go, time to go. So we drove back into my apartment, campus apartments. And I was just standing there in my sweatshirt, my underwear, like I was gonna brush my teeth. So I had my toothbrush in my hand, and it had one of those little things on the end of the handle that like you would use to, if you needed to, take care of something on your gums or whatever it may be. So I turned around, he came into the room, closed the door. He was between me and the door, like there was nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. And he came at me, and I was like, well, maybe if I kiss him, like maybe we can get out of this. Maybe this will be okay. I was very soon on my back, and with him on top of me, and I couldn't breathe. His hand around my neck. I ended up with bruises, fingerprints on my neck and my throat, and then I felt something very painful, and I think it was the toothbrush, and I think he was using the toothbrush to hurt me. He raped me, and then he left, and there was a lot of blood. I just remember pulling the sheets off my bed and standing in the scalding hot shower, like watching the blood run down the drain. I was afraid to do or say anything about it because I was the disaster they had just sent home to get, my act together. A couple of days went by, and one of the associate deans said to me, a woman of all things, she said to me, what is this I hear, she's this accusatory tone. What is this I hear about you and some problem? And I was like, nothing. Another day went by, and I went to the police, finally, and they said something I will never forget. The cop said to me, he said, you'd have been better off if he really hurt you. And that wasn't even really the end of it, because he kept, for like until he graduated, so it would have been a year and a half. He stalked me, followed me everywhere I went. I turned up in different places. He would ask about me. It was not a good situation. And I was really afraid all the time. Just living in terror all the time. But I was on my way back from the fraternities, and so I was on this path in the woods. Not a long path. And he was there. And he raped me again. So sometimes when the pain is really acute, I can taste the dirt in my mouth, the blood, it's face down in the woods. So I'm carrying that around. And a lot of women are carrying that around. Many, too many, It has been my job many times to make the decision about how to tell the story, how to visualize the story. It has to be horrible. If it isn't horrible, I'm not being a good steward of the pain of hundreds of thousands of people. But also, there is an urgency about people listening to the story you have to tell. And that sometimes requires having some discipline about exactly how horrible it can be. But I've spent a lot of time seeing things, reading things that nobody should have to see or read or know. Part of my shadow, part of my darkness is these people that I have known in the worst moments of their lives. Zarmina, who was shot to death by the Taliban on the penalty line of a soccer stadium, and Celeste, whose legs were blown off in the Boston bombing, and the kid in the Bataclan theater in France who hid under dead bodies until he could get out. Or sitting across from Donna and Gary Reitler, whose daughter Trisha was abducted and probably killed, but they've never found her. So all of that is in me, and I think allows me to bring that compassion and empathy to the work that I do. All of these people are living in my body. I think this is what my gift is. I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Because what I'm able to do is take stories that are really important, that people really need to pay attention to, that are easy to ignore because they're so painful. But I can take them and provide them and put them into the world in a way that's palatable. With Beneath the Veil, which was about Afghanistan and probably the most important film I ever did. When I met Syra, the moment where our lives intersected was a very important moment in the history of an ancient country and civilization. I think Syra aches because she recognizes how much beauty is there, how much wisdom is there, how much magic is, in this part of the world. And I think she felt great urgency about, not unlike I did, to honor the pain and to shine the light get the word out there, let people see what's happening. And of course, it turned out to be critically important because 2 weeks later it was 9/11.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
You know, as Americans, I don't know that we're very nuanced. We like our good guys and our bad guys. We like to have somebody to blame. And it certainly would have been very easy to put all of Afghanistan in that category. So the fact that Syra had made this, courageous film, and that I was able to get it on the air to CNN. At the time it was on, it was the highest rating documentary we'd ever done. It was for a long time. And what I hope to believe is that helped provide some nuance and amongst many other things, some understanding of the complexities for Americans when it came to viewing this part of the world in that moment. I was working on a project called Voices of Auschwitz. It was the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the camp. So, has to be horrible. Has to be horrible. How horrible, I spent a lot of time looking at footage in, the National Archives of the freeing of these camps, and I was really kind of proud of myself because I was like, I was okay. I was holding it together, and then I got into the pictures of the piles of shoes and the piles of suitcases and the glasses, somebody who wears glasses. Like, when they take your glasses, they're done with you. And all of a sudden, it was like demonic. It was like a thing in my body. And these gulping sobs. And I was not in control of all of the emotion and all of the grief and the anger, and I had to go into my office and cry for like 45 minutes. One of the pictures was of a giant pile of teddy bears and dolls. And that's what broke me, because when you think about it, this is where all the, they'd been in ghettos and they'd lost everything in their houses and they'd sold anything of value, and and they let their kid keep this one thing that felt like home and that felt like childhood and that felt like love, and this teddy bear, and they carried the teddy bear squashed in the cattle cars where nobody could sit down, nobody could move. Still there was room. And then they took them. And it just landed on me so heavily, thinking about knowing as a parent that your child probably has figured out that there's no hope, These are not people I've known. These are not people that know me, but it just feels to me like it must be powerful in the universe to say, I see what happened, and I see how awful that must have been. And I honor that in you. I honor what you've been through. 2017. Yeah, that was not a good year. Within 6 months, I got divorced, and then I got laid off from the job I'd had for 20 plus years at CNN. This was some significant devastation. I lost my job. I lost my income. I lost my children half of the time. Half of the time they were with their dad, and they needed to be. I mean, that's not that that was wrong, but then they weren't with me. I couldn't see them every time I wanted. I love being a woman. I love how we are and what we can do. But you know, being a woman is not easy. Really not easy. And being a woman in a male-dominated business, like television, certainly like news, is not for the faint of heart. I don't know that they took me as seriously as they might have if I had been a male colleague. I don't know, it was sort of easier maybe to dismiss. Part of the reason I lost my job was because they wanted to move my position to New York, where one of their buddies could occupy it instead. It really, really stings. It really hurts. It's wrong, it's unfair, and it is certainly not the way it ought to be. However, I don't know how I would have left CNN either, but for once in my life, it was smaller than, it didn't feel like it was in control of me. My mother is slipping away, and yet the thing that really remains powerfully is the love. She's squishy and snuggly, and she wants to hold my hand and touch my face and tell me I'm wonderful. And you know, that's honestly, I could have used a whole lot of that when I was like 17. I don't think my father is aware of how really difficult he is. It's a tough time with my dad. It's a tough time for my dad, but it's also really just a tough time in our family dynamic. Of course, he's losing his partner of 60 years. He's unglued, you know. But this is my mother I'm losing, and I have an opinion too. And it's you know, it's led to some great pain between us, and my dad and me. It's led to pain between my dad and my sister. He thinks of me as 12 and her as 9, and I am not 12 and she is not 9. As heartbreaking as it was to lose my job at CNN, as difficult as it made things for me financially, there is an enormous amount of love and excitement and energy and enthusiasm that's in my life now. And I can't tell you how good it feels to me to be able to empower someone else to say what they should say. Where does it go? I mean, I've been in therapy forever. So, you know, I'll always carry this stuff around, I'm sure. But I hope that some of it is ultimately, you know, for good, for a good cause.
Okay, Trevor?
I'm fine.
You had a tough job.
I'm still upset about the.
You gotta let it go, boss.
Yeah.
You gotta let it go.
Sucks.
Yeah.
We're not gonna make it a big thing. You guys can just start talking.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Well, this